Welcome to week 3 of the Talking Vertical podcast with myself, Richard, and
Liam. Hey guys.
So we've got a few things we want to chat about this week, but the first thing we wanted to go on is I read quite an interesting article from Rock and Ice written by Conrad Anker with some interesting stuff about climbing and climate change. Did you have a chance to read it?
I skim read it. I thought it was about something completely different, so I thought I already knew the topic. But I thought it was about all the litter up Everest. But I think that's another topic for another day. But I did skim read it just before we came on air.
Yeah. So it had some quite interesting points about climate change, and I'm sure we'll go into more detail maybe on another podcast. But I'd strongly recommend it for a read. It's got a good message, like stop berating everyone for not doing enough to combat climate change and actually try and work in a more positive way is sort of the message it had. Like, he was very open about the fact that he flies a jet to the mountains, he does all this stuff, he buys new climbing gear, there's all this stuff that has a carbon footprint, and actually in the world we live in, it's kind of hard to not have that carbon footprint. So it's almost more about trying to make those small changes and actually want to drive the change on a bigger scale through politics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. And the bits that I did read were the fact that he brought up that pro-level climbers set all these goals, like Alex Honnold doing free solo for 10 years, but actually how many of them have set a real goal to combat climate change and making those little choices, should the fact that you've got this massive goal to climb a certain mountain, should that come before climate change? Or maybe you should make a choice of, I'm just going to go climb the highest mountain in my country, because that might be better. That's an interesting point I'd not come across before. Is that a goal-setting analogy of how many people actually set a climate target as part of their goals in life?
Yeah. And he did bring up the carbon offsetting. Like, it would be a good idea to actually look into that. I haven't looked into carbon offsetting for myself, but these are the things that are going to make positive change. Because the fact of the matter is if climate change goes the way we are, and the article does stress that it just takes the opinion that we accept climate change is a thing, and we're not getting into the debate whether it is and isn't a thing. It takes the standpoint that it is a thing, which I quite like as well, because it doesn't get watered down with that argument. And the fact of the matter is there's going to be climbs that are completely different in 10 years' time due to climate change. Like, there's ice climbing that won't be ice climbing anymore. I
think that kind of jumps into what we're going to talk about today in terms of how we're evolving as a community and kind of setting our goals personally. I think it was a little, we touched about our climbing journeys in the last couple of episodes. If you haven't listened to them, go and listen to them. They're on all major platforms. Last week we spoke about, it's completely gone, about making money in your climbing career. First week we kind of suggest about our new stories. I think this week we're kind of going to dig deeper into our aspirations as climbers and where we're going forward, share a little bit of wisdom that we've developed on goal setting ourselves. Maybe it's your goal setting for your 7B or personal goal setting for coming back from injury. I ran an Instagram poll last week about, it was a 3K giveaway for an Instagram following, and actually I asked people to say why they loved my climbing brand LKS, and a lot of them said it was because they said that we're inspiring, which I'm not sure that I quite push for inspiring, but it's interesting.
I take it.
I take it. And then some of them said that it's really interesting to see you set your goals of coming back from injury and stuff, because as a brand, that seems to have been a focus for it.
So where are you thinking with your climbing? What? All right, let's go years time.
a year's time. To me, in a year's time, I just want to be back climbing, and what I see that as looking at is back climbing on a rope and doing some really steep, hard climbing, sort of like hardcore climbing. Ooh, there's a car going past.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's another van. We got distracted. Like some really steep, hardcore climbing stuff that's not gonna get me injured. But I can get back to climbing. I don't think it's practical that I'll get back to bouldering at any time soon. That's sort of my thing. So I'd like to get down to the south of France and maybe try a 6B or a 6C, steep, overhanging roof, really hard work, and see if that can become a climbing style. I have no idea.
Rare, those really steep 6Bs. I mean, you can find them, but they're rare to find those really steep.
Maybe I need to jump it up to like a 7A. I don't know. I haven't done enough research into goal setting, and that's actually an interesting topic, is when we come to set these goals, like, who do we decide on what we're going to do and where we're going to go? And I have this, is it really a goal of mine to get back on a rope, or should I really set a goal like, I want to go down to Seis in the south of France and climb a steep 7A? What do you think on that point? Like,
I think having a goal like, I want to get back on a rope and get some climbs in is good sort of goal. But then you want a bit more meat on the bones. Like, you want almost have like those quite easy, achievable like ticks. So like you said, going down the Seis and get on a 7A, and like you've achieved part of your goal. The getting on the rope more is quite hard to measure. But if at the end of a year, I've done the most rope climbing in years that I've ever done in a year, then you've achieved that goal. So it's quite nice almost breaking down your goals to have a few sort of quite easily obtainable, and it's almost tiered to build up to your overreaching goal. Because if I said today, goal 8A, but I didn't really plan out anything, didn't like structure it anyway, I'd probably find at the end of the year, I'm like, oh, I haven't climbed 8A. We've just bumped that age rating of a podcast. But it's like, you get to the end of the year and it's like, I haven't done my goal. But it's not so bad not achieving your goal, as long as you're achieving some stuff and having those smaller goals. It's quite good to make sure you're achieving.
I don't like theory, but when I was at university, we had this something to do with goal setting. It was sort of macro, micro, and meso. Have you come across that?
No.
So your macro goal is your big goal. So my big goal is I want to climb an 8A for you. And then your micro goal is you break it down into your little steps. So for me to be able to climb 8A, I need to climb 7A, 7B, 7C, blah, blah, blah. And then your meso goals are quite literally, what do I need to do to get to each sort of goal? I don't want to dig into that because that's training. Yeah. And I don't want this to become a training podcast. I'm not entirely sure I'm in shot on the camera. Yeah. So you'll hear us talk about the camera throughout the thing, guys. We do record these podcasts audioly and visually. Video. Yeah. So they are on YouTube if you want to see our lovely faces. It's interesting that we've both jumped towards grade goals when this conversation started with we're not thinking about climate change enough in our goal setting. Would you as a climber set a climate goal in some sense? I've never said that phrase, climate goal, before.
No, I find I try and like do good positive changes in my life where I can, just making small steps. I haven't really looked at like, how do you measure how much effect you have on climate change? And I know you've got calculators that can work out your carbon footprint, but it's kind of hard to measure what impact you're having. But there's definitely things you can get involved in to give back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I guess you can have a goal of I want to reduce my carbon footprint, but I wonder if we as a climbing community should be setting goals like I've jumped to going down to the south of France to do a steep climbing, but inevitably that means travelling.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be setting a goal that's saying to myself, I want to climb in a crag in the UK, which is going to reduce my carbon footprint. Like, I don't know whether me driving to the Lake District in a diesel van is less carbon than me getting a train to the south of France.
Yeah.
Interesting conversation that you could have, but I think...
Well, it's something you can look into, find out.
Yeah, and I think just saying that, we're not going to be able to give you that answer, but that is definitely a good point that we as climbing community, I don't think we make that choice at all. And even in my daily life, I'm starting to try and make that choice that at home I live 10 minutes walk from a station, which then can get me into Reading or London, but most days of the week I would choose to drive into Reading in a diesel vehicle. And does that really make any difference to an electric train? Like, these private transport solutions we're making.
How do you feel about the burden being on your shoulders? Do you think your change is gonna make the change that needs to happen?
I think it is, because ultimately, I don't know the exact figure, but I was listening to something or reading something somewhere on climate change that said actually I was listening to a great podcast called 99% Invisible, and it was a podcast about how buses are so great, which is quite a niche podcast, but it was really interesting. But they said private transport has become, like, I think it's the top, or maybe one of the top contributions to climate change. So the government could ban me driving a car, but ultimately I'm the one making the choice to get in the car in the morning when there are other modes of transport around. And I'm not saying, like, if you need your car for your job for whatever reason, you're going to need a car, but if you work in an office or something, do you need to take that car? Do you need to take that private mode?
Yeah. I think it's it's good to make positive change in your life, but I would also believe you need to be, along with positive change in your life, is actually start prioritizing these questions in your influence in politics.
Could you set that as your goal, like, as a climber, as a community that needs the environment around us? Like, certain sports don't really need the rocks. I think the article touched on it. Like, climbers and scuba divers massively need this community to operate. Should that be one of our priorities as a goal, as a climbing society, to be really putting that pressure on? Do you think?
Yeah, well, you're seeing it in the big names in climbing. Like, Tommy Caldwell is very open about not being that into politics until recently, and now a lot of his latest stuff is really heavily involved in political movements to do with climate change, access, and stuff like that.
But on that note, like, we always talk about big names, but it's yourself personally, like, your goals, and what are your climate goals? Let's pick something off the spot now and say.
So I definitely want to look into, actually, could be as small as writing a letter to your
local politician.
Your local politician regarding an issue. Try and watch out for those issues that are cropping up in the government. And actually, if you see one that is coming up that's going to be discussed in the House of Commons, write to your local politician being like, the support of this bill, or whatever extent it is something that I do consider when I vote.
That's interesting. I don't think I looked at. So we've recently had an election in the UK, just in case we've got an international listener that missed that. We had 15 listeners in episode 1 at this point, so you never know. Someone might have been in Japan or something. I don't think I looked once really at their manifestos about what they were going to do for climate. I briefly looked on what their policies might affect me. That was more about my access to the environment and access to the countryside, which is another issue I think we could talk on a podcast about. Yeah. But I didn't look, and I don't know if you did.
Yeah, it heavily, heavily influenced my decision. I wanted to vote for someone who would take that subject seriously and actually like talk about it. But
yeah, it's a really interesting topic. I think with all of these things, we could spend all night talking about that. Just jumping back to the goal setting, do you have? I think we got a little bit distracted by the climbing concerts. Personally, like, what's your aspirations in climbing over the next year? Like, you asked me where I want to be in a year.
So
I want to be in the south of France. Where do you want to be?
So in a year's time, I'm hoping to try and get 100 logged outdoor climbs. I've done it in the past, but
in the course of a year.
In the course of a year, I've done it in the past, but it's more sort of getting myself a goal to set with the aim to get myself more active in outdoor climbing, and doing a wealth of climbing. So I'm looking at doing some trad, some sport, some bouldering. Not quite got myself any ice axes yet, so the ice climbing might be on the back burner.
It could be. It depends if climate change happens.
It depends how quickly that.
Yeah, you might not want to invest in some ice axes just in case, you know.
And I think I mentioned on a previous podcast, it's all about consolidation for me this year. So I've done 17B. I want to get some more 7As, some more 7A pluses, and maybe some more 7Bs. 7B was quite a hard amount of work, quite a bit of a siege on the route. So it probably would be again to get my second one. So
I wonder if we should actually like set some goals right now about where we want to be in a year, so then we can come back to this podcast and be like, have we made it? Because like you said at the start, like you have to set something.
Yeah, well, my plan. So on that note, my plan is to consolidate this year, and my plan was to aim for 70 next year on sport grade.
21.
Yeah.
2021.
2021.
You do look 21 years old.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that. I'm gonna be a bit topical.
Yeah.
Where's that 7C gonna be in terms of let's put a climate goal onto that.
It's probably going to be in the UK.
Yeah. Probably. How are you going to make that more sustainable in terms of climate change?
Well, I think when I go out, I'm probably quite conscious about the car sharing as it is when I drive to Crags. So tomorrow I'm meeting up with a friend from Portsmouth, and we're actually making sure we meet in Salisbury to go on to car share from there. So we're sharing the journey, trying to do that a little bit. It's probably not perfect, but
at least you're doing something, I guess.
Yeah. If I really want to go the extra mile, I might start posting them online, seeing if anyone needs a lift.
I guess car sharing.
Yeah, it's
quite a hard conversation to have, and I think going forward in the future we need to have more of those conversations.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how that affects my goal of going to the south of France. Maybe I'll walk. Maybe my goal will just be to get to the south of France by this time next year.
Without making a negative impact to your carbon footprint.
Row the channel. Yeah. Take all my gear with me. I'll get there and realise I need a belayer and I'll have to walk back again.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about this week?
What about yourself for actually naming a goal?
I don't know any climbs. I'd like to really get a climb named as a goal.
That's another thing I can add. I've got a goal of climbing Avenging the Housewells at Winspit. Been a long-term goal for me.
Yeah.
Still haven't done it. I've probably been on it many a times, but never got close to it.
I'd love to. Yeah, I think to me I don't know if this is a year goal or if this is a 5-year goal, is to climb a steep 7A route somewhere in the world. I'd like to climb in the south of France just because I like France. Doesn't really suit with the climate change goal. Maybe I'll get a train. French trains are electric and whatnot, so it's probably doable. Training bicycle.
Yeah. But does climate change mean we have to stop traveling?
Yeah,
That's
I
the
think
question.
I think ultimately I was ironically on a date about just for Christmas, and this girl, we were trying to ask interesting questions to each other, and climate change came up on a date, which isn't a great dating topic. Luckily, she agreed that climate change probably was a thing, and I kind of came to the conclusion in the next 5 years, I would happily make the choice of not traveling, not getting a plane somewhere, not doing something, if that meant the world could still be there for me to enjoy the countryside.
So
Make that choice.
One of those compromise, because I think a large part of it is compromise, and actually, I think I saw a study that 10% of air passengers contribute 90% of the actual journey. So it's frequent flyers who are the ones who are filling up the airplanes. So when I heard that fact, I was like, what I could do is just not be a frequent flyer. Like, I could make a commitment of I'm only going to fly once a year. Like, I'll look at other means of transport for other holidays, but flying, I get one flighted trip a year.
Otherwise known as one flight.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point as well, because as the climbing community, we tend to try and not spend money. We tend to try and do the cheapest way of. We tend to go to Spain on the cheapest flight possible with a budget airliner. I think we might have to change as a community if we're going to try and do that. That might not necessarily be the best way.
But surely a flight that tries and fits as many people in to one plane is better than a flight that flies with half the plane in first class. So
I struggle. I don't know the economics of it. I'm kind of in the belief that, like, if everyone suddenly stopped flying, the airlines would go out of business and we wouldn't have flights in the first place. Like, maybe that's a political thing that there needs to be pressure from.
But there are airlines that are trying to combat, trying to do the offset program. So I guess it's not something I've looked into recently, but that's always an avenue you can look into when selecting what airline.
I think we should do a whole podcast episode on, is it possible for us to offset a climbing trip and whether that's the right solution to climate change. Because I'm not going to go into it now, but personally I'm not sure climate offset is the right way forward. Like, planting a load more trees isn't necessarily going to solve the solution, but we'll talk about that, I reckon, in another episode, because there's a whole other kettle of fish for that.
I think we might get into a bit of a
discussion where we like that.
Cool.
I feel like
we've covered quite a lot today.
It's been 20, 25, it'll probably be like 26 minutes before we're finished. How are you finding podcasting at the moment, by the way?
Yeah. It's just having a chat. But
just having a chat,
being recorded and videoed.
Yeah, I think we forget the videos though.
Yeah.
How are you guys finding it? It's kind of, it feels weird to be asking for feedback. I don't think we've had any yet, apart from people who I know. I like the name.
I mean, maybe we could sort out an email, like a specific Talking Vertical email.
Yeah.
And then we can post it in show notes for you guys to have a...
I tell you what, if you guys drop an email to talkingvertical@gmail.com, check the show notes just to check that there isn't a variation of that. It might be let's go talkingvertical2020@gmail.com, because that won't be taken, I'm sure. Anyway, check the show notes if you've got any feedback. If not, drop us a DM on one of our social medias. Mine's LKS Climbing. Yours is Richard.W.Fox. Did you mean to make it like a web address?
No.
It just sounds really nice. It's Richard.W.Fox.
Yeah.
So yeah, just drop us that. If not, drop us a line, or you can, if you know us personally, do say to us we really like your podcast, or say to us Liam's voice is really annoying, something like that. That's probably what I'd expect. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we won't see you in the next one. We'll
talk to you in the next one.
What's an odd phrase?
Talking Vertical, a climbing lifestyle podcast. Presented by Richard Fox and Liam Kilsby-Steele. Produced by LKS Climbing. Keep climbing hard.